The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. Headline inflation accelerated to 5.3% in August, the first spike following 6 months of decline. The August inflation is faster than the 4.7% print in July, but slower than the 6.3% logged in the same period last year. It also falls within Bangko Central's forecast of 4.8 to 5.6%, but is higher than the 4.9% median forecast by analysts in a Business World poll. This marks the first spike in inflation in 7 months. Year-to-date inflation is now logged at 6.6%, while core inflation is pegged at 6.1%, slower than the 6.7% recorded in July. The main contributor for this increase is the hike in prices of food and non-alcoholic beverages, primarily driven by the increase in prices of vegetables and rice owing to recent typhoons and the global rice crisis. Transportation and fuel prices are also seen as drivers of inflation, with month-on-month hikes in fuel costs as well as the recent fare increases in LRT Lines 1 and 2. The PSA said they are especially looking out for fuel price hikes as an upside risk for inflation this month. This report also coincides with the first day of the 41 and 45 peso cap on rice prices. PSA said data on the effects of price ceiling will be released by mid-September. Consumers are bearing the brunt of higher prices from oil to basic commodities. Starting today, diesel prices are up by 1 peso and 20 centavos a liter. Gasoline will see a price increase of 50 centavos per liter, while kerosene prices will climb by 1 peso and 10 centavos per liter. Earlier today, motorists scrambled to fill up their tank ahead of the fuel price hike. Jeepney drivers in particular are now anticipating lower take-home pay due to the increase. As rice prices soar, the government offers consumers some relief with the implementation of price cap on rice products today. Prices of regular milled rice should not go over 41 pesos per kilo, while well-milled rice should stay under 45 pesos per kilo. However, retailers lament that what they deem is a rushed implementation of the price cap. Retailers say the government should have given them enough time to sell the stocks they bought at elevated prices. Meanwhile, some farmers stage a protest as imported onions flood the market. Farmers say the increase in imported supplies have cut prices of local onions in cold storage facilities by half. Because of this, they now call on government to stop giving out permits for onion importation. The Agriculture Department says it is ready to delay imports to give farmers enough time to finish their stocks. Here to give us his insights on the latest inflation data, we have with us on the show RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort. Good morning, Sir Mike. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Diego, and to all your viewers.
Okay, sir, let's get right to it. 5.3% in August, faster than analysts estimate. Was this really unexpected?
But this is somewhat already expected because of the leading indicators like the sharp increase in rice and palay prices, because rice accounts for nearly 10% of the inflation basket. And we all know that if you look at commercial prices of rice, they have gone up at least 20 or even 25% in a short span of time. So we have seen really a big month-on-month move. And especially this was also exacerbated by the storm damage by Egay in the latter part of July. And of course, we still have storm damage just recently. And also, the world price of rice has been hovering at among 15-year highs recently because of the export restrictions on rice by India and the other rice exporting countries, because they're also experiencing drought or lack of rainfall that reduce output. So they have to secure their respective local supplies first based on their requirements before they. So that's why there's some reduction in exports. So, and of course, other than that, we have seen the series of local fuel pump price increases for the 9th straight week. Global oil prices already at the highest in 9.5 months or since early November.
Yes.
So, as well as the weaker peso since over the past month, from 54 levels, now it's at 56 levels. So that's weaker peso by at least around 3 to 4%. So that's gonna increase outright the import prices of many imported commodities and products. So all those three factors, those three major factors, really led to this some pickup in inflation to 5.3%.
You mentioned those three factors, Sir Mike, but are there other things that would contribute to inflation that you think is also worthy or noteworthy to look at?
Well, like the storm damage also, because it's worth noting that the storm damage, the latter part of July, that hit northern and central Luzon. And the biggest producers of rice, corn, vegetables. So we have seen, well, this is somewhat expected also whenever there's storm damage during the typhoon season. There's a sudden pickup in the prices of food, especially vegetables.
Yes.
So yeah, because food accounts for the biggest bulk of the inflation index or inflation basket. So yeah, that partly led to the acceleration. So now going forward, what's important to anticipate? As of course now the start of the ceiling on rice prices. So hopefully that would let's see if that would deliver and that would temper the prices of rice and for the coming months. And of course, we have to note also the fact that for the latter part of this year, fourth quarter to first quarter of next year, there's that risk of El Nino or risk of drought, reduced rainfall that could potentially reduce the production and output of rice and other agricultural commodities. And if there would be less output and supplies, that could also lead to some pickup in prices later this year up to early next year. So those are very important considerations. And then also, let's see if how oil prices would also behave in the coming months.
Yes, yeah.
Because so far, 9 straight weeks of local fuel pump price hikes so far.
Yes,
It has been continuous, and that's also, of course, that's adding to inflation. That's adding to that's being passed on to the products being transported, whether agricultural or basic commodities or finished products. So that's being added on also to the prices of other products and services, and
That's
as
right.
well as, of course, the effects of the hike in minimum wages. That's 7% increase since July 16, initially in Metro Manila, but that's 40 pesos increase to 610 pesos
Yes.
for the minimum wages. So it's also the pass-on effects would also be possible, meaning just like similar to what we have seen in recent years, especially last year, whenever there are increase in minimum wages, that's going to be passed on in terms of higher prices of goods and services in the economy. Or the products, if that can be passed on to the products, yeah, that could be done. Unless there would be some competition that would temper the pass-on effects.
We were talking about, sir, all the factors that contribute to inflation, but what can the government do at this point to help cool it down? Should the BSP hike the rates?
Well, now practically it's mostly supply side, meaning it's not necessarily due to higher demand, but reduced supply.
Yeah.
Maybe due to the drought in other countries, the reduction in rice exports by India and other rice exporters, and also, of course, yeah, and the other commodities also like oil. It's due to the reduction in output by the biggest oil producers like Saudi Arabia, OPEC Plus, and Russia in recent months, enabled for them to support prices and prevent the oil prices from going down further. And that resulted to some uptick in global oil prices to 9.5-month highs. So it's really supply side, not necessarily due to higher demand. So therefore, any rate hike may not be as effective. So it's really supply side interventions that would
Okay.
really matter most. Like now, with price ceilings, that's aiming at the supply side. And of course, what's really fundamental is to further increase domestic output of rice and other agricultural commodities, enable to increase local supplies.
Mhm.
And yeah, if you have more output, more local supply, that's going to help bring down prices fundamentally.
I would like to also shift a little bit and ask your insights on the latest statements of Finance Secretary Jokno's latest call for a review of the free tuition program for state universities and colleges. What's your take on that? Is the program really inefficient as wasteful as Sec Jokno described?
Well, yeah, they have attributed it to metrics showing that uh, well, the free college education or free tertiary education, especially state colleges and universities owned by the government, uh, well, they should be targeted and rationalized to the poorest of the poor, those who are most deserving because they cannot afford it. And what they have pointed out, the economic team has pointed out, is that those who can afford are benefiting from this subsidy. Yeah, it's like that should be some form of consistency
Mhm.
from the point of view of the fiscal managers, the economic team, as we have seen in previous administrations. They're very consistent.
That's
It's
right.
understandable and prudent fiscally because it's a drain to the resources. Well, there's a review. Actually, in the past, also there was this socialized tuition tiers, meaning those who can afford can pay, and
Mhm.
those who those who cannot afford, or those who are with meager financial resources or incomes,
Mhm.
they only pay relatively less according to what they can afford. So yeah, it's a matter of rationalizing it actually,
Okay.
rather than giving a blanket. Uh, well, it's a blanket free for all, even subsidizing the wealthy or the rich or those who can afford it, no, who can afford to pay for tuition. So it's something. Well, given the limited resources, the finite resources, and also the need to narrow the budget deficits. Of course, what really brings these fiscal reform measures to the fore is we have seen increased
Mhm.
borrowings during the pandemic because during the lockdowns there was significant reduction in tax revenues and increased government spending on various COVID programs, ayuda, financial assistance. But now that's done and over with, the borrowings, the larger deficits have been incurred. So now there's a need, during better economic times, there's a need to rationalize and try to come up with, well, it's not just on the expenditure side, but tax
Yeah.
reform measures, the taxes, higher taxes, and on the spending, you have the right sizing of the government and also pension reform. So all of which are consistent. The previous, at least the previous three administrations, they've been
Yes.
very consistent about it. They're trying to protect the recurring sources of income of government and even bolster it. And they're also trying to plug in any unnecessary leakage or wastage uh, or any,
Yes.
well, any increase in expenditures, because bottom line there is to narrow the budget deficit. So there's a to reduce the need to borrow more and eventually make the fiscal management more sustainable at, well, now at 61% of GDP, and bring it down to below the international standard of 60%, so that debt management and fiscal management would be sustainable for the long term and for the current generations.
Well, those are really very interesting insights, Sir Mike. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you very much for joining us, RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort.
Thank you so much, Jagon, to your view.
Thank you, thank you. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. The Philippines' debt service burden on external debt soared in May. According to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the debt service burden on external debt rose by 160% to $6.5 billion from $2.5 billion in 2022. The debt service burden is the amount of money that the country must repay to its foreign creditors. This includes both principal and interest payments. Principal payments jumped by over 163% to $3.7 billion from last year's $1.4 billion. Meanwhile, interest payments rose by 145% from $1.1 billion in 2022 to $2.7 billion. One analyst said this is likely due to the recent hike in global interest rates. As of March 2023, the Philippines' outstanding external debt increased to $118.8 billion from $109.75 billion a year earlier. The debt service ratio also increased to nearly 13% by the end of March from just 4% in 2022. Analysts say investments made by the Maharlika Investment Fund should be monitored closely. This as the implementing rules and regulations of the MIF allow it to invest in infrastructure projects, fixed income instruments, domestic and foreign corporate bonds, as well as listed or unlisted equity. Ateneo de Manila University economics professor Leonardo Lanzona says the government must prove that the returns from the MIF are greater than if the resources were put in government social investments. Analysts also say any investments should be carefully scrutinized to prevent the government from incurring losses and more debt. Former Bangko Sentral Deputy Governor Diwa Ginigundo warns of risks that may arise from the fact that the Maharlika Investment Corporation can extend loans and guarantees. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.